Hello guys, James here back again. Today I'm going to bring you a deck tech as well as a comprehensive guide on how to play Viserai in Blitz. This deck is the OTK version of the deck. I think there's a few very good matchups and one terrible matchup which you never want to see. Okay, so first of all, obviously your hero is Viserai, and against most decks, if they are purely combat based, here's what you want to be running. You always choose Reupload as your weapon. You play the Skull Cap, the Skeleta, the gloves, and the Narun boots. This is very important in helping you survive, because every tier represents about 9 to 10 block value. Then for the rest of the equipment slots, we do run the Nebula Blade because we want to bring this in against the Wizard. Otherwise your Sigils and Sunkiss will be completely useless because they'll always be they'll start at less life, then you'll be stuck with Sigils in your hand. Then similarly for the Wizard matchup, you'll bring in these. And then the Mage Master Boots is for matchups that you feel that you won't be very pressured, such as the Mirror or maybe Ranger. Yeah, in the Mirror you also could swap out the Iron Rod legs for a Narun boots. Yeah, because the Skull Cap's not a reliable source of Arcane Barrier. And also because of the way the Arcane Barrier works, it's not very efficient when you want to use it to block just Rune Chants. Okay, then on to the deck. For blues, we are running 2 Blue Slogism. This is mostly just to secure the kill. Usually you want to use this in combination with Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath in order to kill your opponent along with about 25 to 26 Rune Chants, because that represents about 38 to 39 damage, which accounting for a 12 blue hand and armor, which will still be more than 20. You play 2 blue, become the Arknight. It's pretty good. It's blue pitch, blocks for 3, allows you to find things. Can have pretty nuts turns where you moderate tide into become the Arknight, discarding 9th Blade to get a Read the Runes. Then you make a ton of Rune Chants that way. That's pretty good. 2 blue Read the Runes and 2 blue Oath of the Arknight, just your generic Rune Chant generators. 2 blue Reduce the Rune Chant. One of the ways you make Rune Chants in this deck, you run 6 of these, so that represents 6 additional Rune Chants. 2 blue Sing Below and 2 blue Fateful Scene. I run these blue defense reactions because in the meta now is very heavily Ira based, so the block 2 is still pretty good against the second Kodachi swing, and this kind of shores up your matchup against the worst matchup of the deck, which is Kanos. So put more blues in the deck to combat Kanos. But the matchup's still very hard, but it makes it a little bit better. I play 2 blue Whisper, generic trigger Viserai, can set up your next few draws. So it's just a block 3. For yellows, you play the 2 Reduce the Rune Chant and 2 9th Blade. This is your only attack action in the deck. You want to use this to finish your opponent. 2 Rune Blood Barrier. Rune Blood Barrier is a interesting card that I feel that lots of people, they don't really know how to play around Rune Blood Barrier. A lot of the times when I play Rune Blood Barrier, the opponent usually tries to commit everything into like breaking a few Rune Chants. Like they'll blow everything, all their resources to break a few Rune Chants, which you're pretty much okay with actually. So you don't really have to overblock too much with your armor and stuff. You can probably save that. Yeah, because Rune Chants can be got back. And yeah, like the Ira players, they'll throw a lot of things at you, try to break the snaps, use more attacks. Actually, quite interestingly, you can actually run the Ira out of attacks now because they ban drone. Because previously the Ira kept looping the drones, so they always had a constant source of pressure. But now you can actually run Iras out of attacks, because for red attacks they only have the 2 Electric Strikes, 2 Command and Conquers, 2 Flying Kicks, Pounding Gale and Torrent of Tempo, yeah, and maybe like Soulbeat Strike, but it's just not really a threatening attack, yeah. So you can actually run the Iras out of red attacks. You play 2 yellow Sing Belows, and 2 yellow Read the Runes, and 1 Remembrance. I cut the Remembrance down from 2 copies to 1 copy because it was really brick when you drew multiples of them, and usually you only need 1 to usually you don't even really need the 1. Sometimes you don't even need the 1 to build up enough rune chance to win the game. And also it also like messes up your deck order, which is relevant. I'll explain why it's relevant later on. 1 red Sunkiss and 2 red Sigils is your life gain package. 2 red Reduce, 2 Fate Foreseen, 2 red Sing Below, and 2 Read the Runes, and 2 Moderate Tide will round out your red package here. So you can see that the deck actually focuses a lot more on blues and yellows, because the reds is like the reds is normally like about 10, 12 cards, no, 13 cards. There's only about 13 reds here, so you really we really tried to shore up the Kano matchup by putting in more blues in our deck. Yeah, and the reason why you will cut the Remembrance, because you don't really want to randomize your deck, is because you're running the full 6 copies of Sing Below, which is because you want to set up your deck in such a way that you draw Slogism together with Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, like it's at the bottom of your deck somewhere, and then you slowly work your way up. You slowly work your way up towards it, and then you combo this with Skeleta. Yeah, so in the previous build where you didn't run Slogism, it was okay to block with Bloodsheath Skeleta, because at the second time, because you didn't really have anything to lower the cost. But now you're running the Slogism, you can break the you should try to save the Skeleta for the Slogism 9th Blade turn, because it's 13 damage. It's a lot. It stops the fuse bad moment from when you 9th Blade plus Rune Chance and your opponent survives on like few HP, then you have our cards in deck. Yeah, so now let's talk matchups. The best matchup by far for this deck, I believe, is Ira, because Ira tends to want to deal you damage in very small consistent amounts, which you are prepared to deal with because you run all these defense reactions, and you can afford to take the 1 Kodachi a turn because you have all these and the Skeleta, and you basically have the same fridge that Warrior has for armor between these. And you blank basically a lot of their defense reactions as well as their sigils with the deck, because you're running Ripping Blade as well. And recently a lot of the Iras have been playing like things like Yellow Unmovable to combat the tall Dorinthia lists, where they Iron Song you then try to go for game. But yeah, you basically blank all those cards because you are not engaging them in combat until the final turn of the game. So your best matchup is Ira. The only thing you have to watch out for is Crane Dance Break Snap Dragon Scalers into Find Center, which will buy them 2 turns against your stack of Rune Chants. The way you can avoid this is when you build up a sizable amount of Rune Chants, you could try to hoard a 9th Blade in your hand, because Find Center can only be blocked by cards with resource cost greater than the amount of chain links they control, and 9th Blade is 9 cost, so this will block Find Center every time. Then if they blew 2 blues to try, because they only run blue Crane Dance and blue Find Center, and Find Center is blue, so if they blew 2 blues after Kodashing you twice, they're unlikely to have a Razor Reflex. Yeah, so usually the Ira game plan is to wear you down where you have very few cards in deck, and then they use Find Center to buy 2 turns against you. So for that 2 turns, you're trying to keep a 9th Blade and not not lose the game before you get the 9th Blade them with the Rune Chance. So apart from that, that's one of the things to watch out for. Apart from that, the Ira matchup is one of the best matchups for this deck, because a lot of things just lines up pretty well. Just lines up pretty well against the Ira deck. Yeah, and the other good matchup for this deck is actually Dorinthia, funnily enough, because the way Dorinthia works is she often forces people to overcommit blocks from hand, because of the way her on-hit mechanic works. You really don't want Dawnblade to hit you the first time. So the way that Dorinthia works is pairs very favorably into this deck, because you are running so many defense reactions. So you could block with just enough, and then when the Dorinthia goes for the pump, then you show him the defense reaction. Sometimes it might be a bit hard because they have cards like Iron Song Determination and Overpower Red, which is a lot of pump. But usually if you are well prepared with a 4 block in arsenal, you should be fine, because during the determination turns you can use the armor to block. So block value against Dorinthia comes at a very heavy premium, so don't use your armor lightly. Don't use your armor on things that you can safely block from hand. Yeah, so usually you save the armor for Iron Song Determination turns, and for going back to Ira, you try to save your armor for the turns where you're getting Command and Conquered, because you probably can't block that, because it takes two real cards to block the Command and Conquer, because you can't defense react it. And sometimes you have something important in arsenal, like maybe you say you have a Rune Blood Bearer in arsenal, you have a read the runes or moderate sign in arsenal, you really don't want to lose that. So you should save your armor to block the CNC. So yeah, those are probably the two best matchups. Moving on to the mid. Another good matchup is Ranger, but no one plays Ranger, so we'll go too in depth about that. Basically the reason why your matchup is good against Ranger is because they run a lot of their raid attacks are 4, and then you just block with defense reactions, and when they go wide, it's easier for you to block with multiple defense reactions, and their on hit you don't really care about the on hit. Raid in the Ledger, that you don't care about Raid in the Ledger, you don't care about Remorseless, so it's not really pressuring to get hit by the Ranger. So those 3 are your best matchups. Your middling matchups are Guardian, Guardian Mechanologist, and whatchamacallit. I think Guardian and Mechanologist are your middling matchups. Guardian can get a little Monka-esque if they dominate Crippling Crush on you, but usually if you because Guardian is a very telegraphed deck, so you could save your Rune Blood Barrier for when they telegraph a big dominate attack. Say they play Towering Titan, so you don't want to die. It's better to lose your rune chance to Towering Titan than to die, right? So say they play Towering Titan, then you play Rune Blood Barrier, so you stymie a lot of that aggression. So against them, you play the incremental game. You always want to keep the thing in arsenal, 4 defense react in arsenal. You don't want to arsenal anything that's not a defense reaction against Guardian, because of the way that Bravo works and how he'll dominate you. So usually, you are pretty safe. You hold 2, say you're holding 8 block in hand, and then you have you have 7 armor here, so you represent 15 block against Towering Titan Crippling Crush. That's 19 damage. So you're still taking the crush, but at least you're not dying. So against Guardian, because they only have a set number of attacks, and they always take turns to set up. So if they are setting up, they're not swinging you with Anotos, and if they're swinging you with Anotos, you can block easily, because you just trade 2 defense reactions for their 1 Anotos swing. So that's pretty good. Yeah, that's about it. Always keep your things. Don't use armor to defend against hammer swings or small swings. Yeah, because the block value really comes at a premium. And when they you need to know when are your opportunities to go for the kill. So against Guardian, for example, they play Showtime, then they find a Crippling Crush. So you know their hand is guaranteed one red card. So you could, theoretically, if you have enough rune chance, go for the final push on that turn if they do the mistake of searching for a Crippling Crush, which is red with Showtime. Or if they Blessing of Deliverance and they review the top of their deck, then you know that they have red cards in hand. So because the Guardian is very telegraphed, it's one of the more middling matchups where it can go either way, because the way their dominate mechanic works matches up pretty well against your defense direction based deck. But there are certain opportunities and windows for you to go through. For Mechanologist, it's a lot of the same reasons why the deck is good against Ranger, because Mechanologist in Blitz likes to go very wide with the boost mechanic. So when they go very wide with the boost mechanic, like 0 to 60, you can use your 4 defense reaction to block that, and your defense reactions line up pretty well against the Mechanologist's attack. The only kind of problem is when they do have the big maximum velocity turn. That's when you guess things get a bit dicey, but once again, that's why you have armor value. That's why you have armor value to attempt to stymie that. Basically, don't get too greedy with your blocks. You can make the rune charge at a slower pace, and eventually the Mechanologists will run out of deck, because every time they boost, they basically lose 2 cards from their deck, because they will lose the 1 card they played, and they lose the 1 card from the boost. Every time they activate Decklo Foundry card, they lose 2 cards from their deck. So basically, you can probably attempt to deck the mech before you even blast him out with rune chance. Yeah. So on to the pretty bad matchups. I say Brute is a very bad matchup, and I say Wizard is a very bad matchup. The reason why I say Brute is a very bad matchup is because he tends to, the random nature of the Intimidate mechanic tends to screw around with your setup a bit. So for example, if your hand is, let's say your hand is Moderate Tide, Read the Runes, and then reduce the rune chant and Fate for Seed. So imagine your hand is like this, then the Rhina intimidates you, then he takes this and this from you. So you're left with this. So you either have to block with this, or don't block with this and eat a bunch of damage. But this represents 6 rune chance, because you get 2 from Viserai and 4 from the Read the Runes. So you're either losing 6 rune chance or you're eating a bunch of damage. So especially if they play cards like Barraging Beatdown and stuff like that. So against them, you always arsenal a defense reaction to avoid getting Barraging Beatdown, because usually they won't be able to intimidate your whole hand unless they get the really nuts Blood Rush Bellow into Blood Rush Bellow turn. If they do get that, then you pretty much lost, but that's like the RNG nature of the class. So there's nothing much you can do about it. But in a normal game state, you always want to arsenal one of these, because at most they take 3 cards from you, then you can still block 2 cards to avoid giving them the Barraging Beatdown buff. That's one of the best cards in the Brute deck. Yeah, so against Brute, not really much else to say. You just want to stay alive, keep healthy, then your armor is there for emergency purposes when he really intimidates away all your defense reactions. And then you have, if you want to preserve, say, a Read the Runes, you can use armor to block. But yeah, then against Kano, Kano is a very bad matchup because he blanks basically every, like, he play against Kano basically blanks like to 1/3 of this deck. Like 1/3 of this deck just does nothing against Kano. Like all the defense reactions do nothing against Kano. So, and Kano also has the ability to play on your turn. So for example, if the Kano goes Spindle he goes Aether Spindle, then he Crucibles it. Then you have to block that with your, you have to pitch to block with your Arcane Barrier. Then now you have a few cards left, and then on your turn you play Read the Runes. Now you have maybe 1 card in hand, and then that's the opportunity for the Kano to do some things with the top of his deck if he did scry something to the... if he did do something. So basically you're pretty much a sitting duck for Kano. So it's basically a race. It's a race to see who can get to critical mass faster. So against Kano, it's pretty safe to arsenal things like Slogism or Ninth Blade in preparation for the final kill turn. And against Kano, the amount of rune chance you need to kill them with Slogism Ninth Blade is actually lower than regular decks. You are probably safe with about 16, 15 might be cutting it a little bit close. Because, okay, let's assume Kano has 4 blue cards in hand. So if Kano has 4 blue cards in hand, like a good Kano player, Kano has 4 blue cards in hand, that's 12, they blocking 12, and then they always have 1 block value from Fendal Spring Tunic. Then we will assume that Fendal Spring Tunic has 1 resource point on it, so they can use that to block. So that's 13 block from resource and 1 armor, so that's 14 block. So you need to deal 29 damage to them in total. So Ninth Blade plus Slogism is 13, so you need to deal an additional 16 on top of that. So 16 rune chance is the kill zone from when they will die to this combo. Obviously the math changes if they got energy potions in play or anything in arsenal, because some of them do play blue unmovable. So obviously the math does change a bit from situation to situation, but most of the time they will die if you present them with 16 rune chance and the Ninth Blade Slogism combo. So yeah, the reason why I play the Slogism combo is to secure the kill, because I've realized from playing the previous versions of the deck without Slogism is that usually they can survive by a very tiny slim margin because this +4 is very important. So usually sometimes they survive with a very slim margin, like 1 or 2 health. Then they basically, you have no more gas after that because you just spend your entire deck's resources into pushing that 1 point of damage. The reason why this is not the red Slogism is once again to show up the Kano matchup, and because there's a lot of things that you actually have to pitch for in this deck. So there are not a lot of things. Basically, you only have to pitch for this Runeblood Barrier. Yeah, so Slogism can pitch for Runeblood Barrier, so it goes to the bottom of the deck. So it's pretty good. So usually, if you're going first, you can pitch Ninth Blade to Grasp of the Arknight to create. Then you can pitch Slogism, and then this. And then you can put this down to the bottom of the deck and start working your way up towards this. So it's plays a lot like Kano when you reach a lot like card counting. So when you reach this stack, assuming you have a Remembrance, then you know your opponent is dead because you draw these two together. Yeah. So that's why we play blue Slogism over red Slogism. Yeah, pretty much that's it for the deck. I think the deck's in a fine place in the meta right now because there's a lot of Ira running around. Should be more people pick up Kano, then it'll be a bit more dicey to play this deck. But this is my favorite class. I really like the aesthetic of Runeblade. And yeah. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any suggestions, any other Runeblade players out there have any suggestions for the deck, yeah, do let me know. I'm always open to suggestions and open to testing the deck, different builds of the deck. I recently saw someone won a skirmish with a gold white version of the deck. They're playing like triptychs and stuff like that. So that might be a very interesting list to try in the future. But yeah, today I bring you this OTK Viserai Decklist. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope to bring you more videos very soon. Goodbye.